and welcome to the Blue Note Fan Report. I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, and this is the only hockey variety show. We're by a fan, for the fan, and you gotta know all about you, the fan. Hockey is just a few days away, and everybody and their brother-in-law is doing previews of this division, previews of that division, previews of this division, previews of that division. So you know what I'm going to do? A preview. That's right. I'm going to preview the Western Division, also known as the Pacific Division, also known as the Gretzky Division, and also known as the, oh my God, why are we in that with so many late night, 9:30 p.m. start division? I reached out to a couple of my friends, and I got a hold of Gillian Young from the Tell It As It Is podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. And guys, you are in for a frickin' treat. This was absolutely fun. You're going to enjoy every moment of it as we break down and talk about the Pacific Division. So let's not wait any longer. Let's not have anything else to do but give a huge round of applause and a Blue Note Fan Report welcome to Mr. Gillian Young of the Tell It As It Is podcast. Hey everybody, this is Guy. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to have a breakdown of the new West, or the Gretzky Division as I like to call it. And I'm bringing in one of my friends. This is Gillian, and I'm sorry Griff, I just went blank on your last name. Young, Gillian Young. Sorry, man. Gillian Young from the Tell It As It Is podcast. Gillian, welcome to the Blue Note Fan Report.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Right. Well, we were supposed to have a third person join us. He may join us a little later, and if he does, great. If not, we're going to continue on from there. So what I wanted to do today was just talk about this new Western Division and the strange bedfellows that have been made. We have you, the Avalanche, and the Blues, who are normally in the Central, been kind of shifted over to the West. Interesting shift. I understand kind of what they did. I know that there's a lot of Blues fans that aren't happy with the later starts. What about Avs fans? What do Avs fans think about being put in the West?
Avs fans, they're not thrilled with a lot of the later starts, like you mentioned, but when you take them out of that Central Division and you put them into what basically a Pacific Division that's in a rebuild for the most part right now, you can't really complain. I mean, you can deal with some later starts, some obviously 9:30 starts to make you stay up a little later than you'd like, but at the end of the day, it's when you can get some of the matchups like you can with, like we'll get into later, with the Kings and the Ducks and all that, but also still have a great matchup with the Blues and Golden Knights. Overall, they're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, this division, we were talking, this division is the big bad three and everybody else. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, hockey's back. All right.
Yep, that's right. Oh, I forgot. This is
That's
Brett. This is Brett, my producer. He's not allowed to speak, but if he does, we'll let him.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, guy. Appreciate that.
Okay, so what we're going to do today, well, first of all, we got to talk about news of the day. So something big happened today. While we were getting set up, we got the, I seen a couple tweets, and then the NHL let out a statement. 6 Dallas Stars, including, and 2 coaches have tested positive for the coronavirus, or COVID-19, however you want to say it. Their facility is closed. They're going to adjust their schedule, their start. They won't start before the 19th now, which for some teams that might be a good thing. You know, they'll get some extra training time in that. I'm thinking, for me personally, I'm thinking this is a good thing that happened now, because it was going to happen, right? There was no ands, ifs, or buts that this was going to happen. So the fact that it's happening at the very beginning of this season gives the NHL a chance to put their protocols into play and see what works and what doesn't, and then adjust as necessary when it happens at the end of the season. What's your thought process on that, Griff?
I absolutely agree with that, because it's inevitable. You've seen with the NBA and the NFL that outbreaks unfortunately are going to happen unless you go to the bubble like the NHL did for the playoffs. This stuff's going to happen. So to at least be able to implement your plan right away and start to see how that would work, that overall is helpful. It is obviously unfortunate for the Stars that this is happening to them, and now they're going to have an even more compressed schedule than they already had, because now they're going to have to reschedule those games into later. And in that 56 game window, I mean, what is it, 110 days? They're going to have to play those games in an even tighter window.
Yeah, there's one 5-day break towards the end of the season. That's absolutely for this.
Absolutely.
Right? And then there's another, I think most teams have a 3-day break or something like that that's built in. That's for shifting games around. So the NHL knew this was going to happen, and I give it to them, and that's fine. And you're like you said, putting your protocols into play now. COVID is the X factor, plain and simple. No matter what we talk about now, the one thing that will affect everything that we're talking about is COVID. Whether or not somebody on your team gets it, whether or not you've got to miss games or compress games or do things like that. That's why you have the taxi squad, all of that. So with that being said, and I know up there in Colorado land, you guys got to be licking your chops a little bit going, Pacific Division? Yeah, buddy.
Absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, seeing some of the matchups against teams rebuilding, like the Kings, the Sharks, the Ducks, and Coyotes are a bit tough to read, but they seem to be on a bit of a down stretch coming into this season. But like you just said, COVID is the ultimate factor. We could be licking our chops right now, and then we might be in March and missing half our roster, because if you get one positive test, you might be out for the month. I mean, it's, from what I remember, it's you go on LTIR, and that's 10 games or I believe 24 days. So that's just for...
Actually, I think that they're adjusted that LTIR for COVID reasons, but they haven't put it out. I've heard some rumblings that if a player gets COVID, that you put them on the LTIR, but it's not, the rules aren't the same. So,
okay, well that changes a few things, but even still, I mean, an outbreak happens, all of a sudden you got to move games around, your pace is thrown off, and you're going to start missing players more and more often. Like, just say for discussion's sake that the Avs start missing a lot of their top 6 players, or worst of all, you start missing some of your goalies, and now you got to put your taxi squad guys back in. And we can make predictions all we want, but we can't predict how this virus is going to affect certain teams and injuries and all that. And in a 56 game season, every single game matters that much more.
Bingo! Give that man a bone. Absolutely. So let's get started. Let's start at the bottom. You know, one thing when you do rankings, I hate when you do a ranking and they rank the team first right off the bat. Okay, I'm done. I don't care who else you got now. So we're going to do it in reverse order, right? So
absolutely.
Start with you, my guest. Who is your number 8 team in this division and why?
My number 8 team in this division is the Los Angeles Kings. And the Kings, they have drafted very well in the last few seasons. They have arguably the best prospect pool in the league, but this is that weird season where none of it really starts to come into effect yet. And they still have a lot of that old roster that is just not the same as that team that won 2 cups earlier in the decade. And they're going to start seeing guys like Velarde start to make a difference, and maybe even see someone like Turcotte or Byfield come in full time. But they've still got Jonathan Quick aging, and they just don't have the depth necessary to compete. And that's not to say they're going to be the worst team in the league. The Kings, they've had their down seasons the last few years. They've definitely bottomed out, but they're just not ready quite yet. Maybe next season, when a lot of these younger guys start to come into the lineup, you can see the Kings start to slowly rise in the rankings. But unless Kopitar and Doughty have big bounce back seasons, which is unlikely given their age and injury histories and everything, it's just not likely to happen. Maybe Jonathan Quick can bounce back to a 2012 form, but again, injuries, age, everything catches up with you eventually. And for the Kings, I've said this on some of my rankings previously, I wouldn't feel too bad about bottoming out again this season, getting another high pick, adding to that prospect pool. I mean, it's a 56 game season. You're not even going to be able to go to the games. I don't see much wrong with punting on it for this season. And then next season, starting to incorporate a lot more of that youth with some of the older talent that's already there. But it's just not going to happen this year. It would take a miracle for the Kings to really break out of that basement.
Good points.
I agree with about 80% of what you said, right? My difference here is, first of all, I think that the bottom team is going to be the Sharks. The Sharks, to me, mailed it in last year, and it's still mailing it in. I don't see, and not only that, the Sharks don't even have the prospect pool, right? And that to me is just, there is no way that the Sharks, if the Sharks win 10 games this year, I would absolutely be surprised. And I'm probably going to get ripped up, but they don't have the prospect pool. They don't have, they're getting rid of Thornton. In goalie, same sieve in goalie. You know, who's going to stop the pucks? It's all of that. Just for me, you look at it, and yeah, I can't give the Sharks any credit whatsoever. So, yeah. Let's move on to number 7. So who's your number 7 team? And I have a feeling I already know who it is.
Well, my number 7 in this West Division, I think you'll like this. It is the San Jose Sharks. And the Sharks, the reason why I do have the Sharks ahead of the Kings, just to refute some of your last points, one big reason is Erik Karlsson. And some other guys bouncing back like Couture and Evander Kane. But that goaltending, man, that sucks. Having Martin Jones and Devin Dubnyk in net, you can make a case that might be the worst goaltending tandem in the league. And you have a guy like Brent Burns, great offensive defenseman, but 35 now and not getting any better on defense, and their defense around him not getting any better as well. They're going to have a hard time keeping pucks out of their net. And like you said, they don't have the prospect pool to come up and start replacing some players they've lost over the years, like Pavelski and Thornton. And they do have the NHL talent like Couture, like Kane, like LeBanc, like Meyer, but that depth is just not enough. And if those guys I just mentioned can't bounce back from injuries and down seasons from last year, it's going to be another tough year. But the Sharks, their time's over. I mean, since 2000, they had the second most playoff wins of any team, and they were competing for cups basically every single year. And eventually it comes time to pay the piper.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they never got the job done. And now you're seeing the results of going for it every single year, just with no Stanley Cup to show for it, and that's a shame.
Hey, we're Blues fans. We know all about that, right? We know all about that. In fact, it took our worst period in our history to get us that cup. 2006 to 2010, that 4 or 5 year period there, when we couldn't do anything right, you know, after the strike, the 04-05 strike, or the 04-05 season going away, yeah, that's where we ended up building up, and that's that. So yeah, I'm on board with you with the Sharks. I mean, again, I put them lower. I put them lower than you. Now I've gone back and forth on this, and up until maybe the day before yesterday, I had the Kings I had the Ducks in this slot. I don't have the Ducks in this slot anymore. I have the Kings in this slot. I have the Kings at 7th, and the reason I have the Kings at 7th is most of what you talked about, but they have that prospect pool that I don't think they're going to use. I think that because they feel that they're in that, you know, let's just enjoy this season mode, they're not going to waste those 7 games. They're not going to play them guys. They're not. I don't think Byfield sees the ice. I really don't. It would be nice if he did, and he should, as a number 2 or 3 overall pick. 2 overall pick, right? Number 2. You know, he should see the ice. I just have a feeling that Kings are going to mismanage it.
I think that's very fair. I mean, and why risk it at this point? Why burn a year of their entry-level contract? I mean, you can play them for the 7 games just to get them the NHL experience, but why burn the entry-level deal on a season you're already going to punt on? Yeah. So, and the NHL talent they have there already, it's not good enough, and why waste the youth right now?
Yeah, so we're on the same page there. So I have a feeling that our number 16 might be the same. So go ahead. Who's your number 16?
Number 6, I go back and forth on this a little bit. For number 6, I have the Arizona Coyotes. And I know you might be differing from that a little bit, but with the Coyotes, They are a franchise in turmoil and constant turmoil. Their offseason was a complete disaster. Yes, they made the playoffs last season, everything. Yes, they beat Nashville to get into the playoffs to finally win a round for the first time since 2012. But this team is a mess, man. And I think that a lot of that is going to carry over. I mean, they tried to trade Ekman Larson, and that didn't work. I'm sure there's something lingering from that. They don't have any offense. They're going to need guys like Hayton to really step up and a guy like Clayton Keller to finally emerge into the player that he was drafted to be, but he just hasn't been that yet. Phil Kessel just doesn't seem like a fit in Arizona, does he? He went from over 80 points in Pittsburgh the season before and dropped all the way to, I think it was 32 last season. And
That's the Crosby effect, though. I think that's the Crosby effect, though, more than anything else. More than a slight on Kessel. I think the Crosby effect's there. I'm with you here, almost. I see where you're coming, but I don't completely agree with you. I was on another podcast, Crunch Time, and we talked about this, and I said the one thing that people are missing about Arizona is Taylor Hall leaving. That is a much, much bigger deal than everybody thinks it is. And I'll get to that when I talk about Arizona. But I'm going to move to the team that I'm absolutely, the only reason I'm putting in this spot is because I just don't think they're ready to go. But if they move from this spot to third, I would not be surprised. And that's the Ducks. And the reason I'm putting the Ducks here is Zegras. That kid, I'm getting ready to write an article on it, and I'm calling it Trevor Zegras, a mighty Duck. They got to throw caution in the wind. This is the kid you burned that year on. He's ready. He was drafted in 19. He was your number 1 overall pick. He proved with the bravado he has. Play him. Play him. I don't care what else you got around him. Play him. Play this man, because he's going to elevate everyone around you as long as they don't take that bravado away from him. And the only reason I'm putting him here is who's around him. You know, they do have a great prospect pool, but who's around him right now? Miller in goal. Miller, the absolute amazing sieve. Right? You know, Miller couldn't stop a beach ball with glue on his hands.
He's played for every team, hasn't he?
Just about, you know.
41 now?
Who cares? I mean, he's making me feel old. Right? So that's the only reason I'm putting him there. But if Zegras takes control of this team at the ripe old age of 19, I say look out. I say absolutely look out.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Right?
That USA game was fun to watch.
You know, I wrote an article and I called him Johnny on the spot. You know, and having his guys sick. And what did he do in the gold medal game? Johnny on the spot with a pass and Johnny on the spot with a goal. He gets in the dirty areas, he says what he thinks, and he backs it up on the ice.
That was a steal for the Ducks in that draft. I'm pretty sure they got him in the later 10s of that draft too, 8 or 9.
He was down a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so now we're at 7. So now I guess we move into 6.
No, you did 6.
Or number
8,
5.
7,
number
6.
5.
Okay, 5. Yeah. Thank you. So number 5, and you've got at 5?
So at number 5, I do have the Anaheim Ducks. And for a lot of the reasons like you just mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if they can rise above that. And the reason I have them above Arizona is because I think the Ducks, while they are still rebuilding, are starting to become a bit more of a complete team. And adding Trevor Zegras to that mix, if he can produce to the expectation we have for him, can take that team out of the basement. And they do still have a lot of the existing pieces from when they were on a lot of their playoff runs. They do still have Silfverberg and Raquel. Getzlaf's probably in his last year, but they still have Adam Henrique as well. Their defense, I think, is pretty underrated. They're going to have guys like Fowler, Lindholm, Manson. They signed Shattenkirk in the offseason as well. And one big X factor for the Ducks this season is John Gibson, who had a down season last year, admittedly, but every year before that was considered to be the most underrated goalie in the league, and deservedly so. He was excellent. And so, yes, Ryan Miller is his backup, 40-year-old Ryan Miller, but if John Gibson can go back to that 920 save percentage and they can get Zegras into the lineup and they can have a solid defense as well and continue to get a bounce back from guys like Raquel and even more youth like Max Jones and Sam Steele and Troy Terry, I think the Ducks can put together a pretty surprising season, not making the playoffs. Obviously, I don't have them in the playoffs, but I think maybe they can at least make a bit of a push. They're out of all the California teams, they're definitely the closest to competing. I mean, San Jose is obviously bottoming out. The Kings, they're almost at that point, but they're not there yet. The Ducks, they didn't go scorched earth, so that's why they're the closest yet. But I think they can have a solid season. Not great, but a solid season.
I agree. If I can add a little bit on to what Griff was saying, that like Ryan Miller, get rid of him, call Goldberg back, and maybe play Fulton Reed and Charlie Conway a little bit more, and maybe try to see if Coach Bombay maybe wants to be an assistant coach, just be there on the bench to help the guys out. I think they have a good chance this year for sure. They maybe pull some strings and get that done. Yeah.
Okay, that was your 10 words you were allowed. You just got them out.
All right. I had to put that out there. I mean, you guys agree, right? Everyone
Yeah, I'm with.
Everyone watching? Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's. Oh, and this is what I love about podcasts, and this is what I love about doing this with no rules, right? Because there are no rules.
Gotta have fun. I mean, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you.
This is hockey.
So for me, so my 6, I'm almost on board with you, but not completely. And I've gone back and forth. You can put a postage stamp over 8-5, 8-4 really in this division.
Postage.
So any team from 8-4 could flip flop, right? Right. So for me, I flip flopped on this. I originally had the Wild here, but you've actually convinced me to put Arizona here. The one thing about Arizona, and I talked a little bit, that everybody doesn't understand is what Hall meant. When that team got there, it wasn't Hall's production. It was what he did in the locker room. Because he bought into what Phil Kessel was selling. Right? He absolutely bought into Phil Kessel's style. Okay, great. He bought into it. The younger guys bought into it. He's gone. Who's going to buy into it? Is Keller going to buy into it? Is Keller going to go, oh yeah, that worked. We still need to do that? Or is Keller going to go, you know what? Nah, it all depends. Who's going to buy into what Kessel is selling? And I'm not sure anybody there is going to buy into it. And I know on your network you have Sporty with Corey and Richie, and they're a very fun group. And I know that I know I was supposed to be on their show, but after the bad month, I probably never will be. But I just, again, it's that postage stamp, and where do you put these teams? And as bad as Minnesota is, it's the postage stamp. You could put them anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and stick Arizona here at 6, right? Or 5? 5. Okay.
If I could add on quickly to Arizona, an X factor for the Coyotes, if we're going to be a little positive about them, is their goaltending. Yeah. And they have quite possibly one of the best goaltending tandems in the league with Darcy Kemper and Antti Ranta. That was what carried them for the majority of last season. And even once Hall got there and everything, it was Kemper stopping every puck he looked at and Ranta being a very solid backup as well. Yes, they dealt with injuries a lot, but you could see in the playoffs as well against Nashville and Colorado as well that they are on the backs of their goalies. Those two carry this team on their backs. And assuming those backs don't break, Arizona can surprise and sneak into that 4th spot as well. I would not be surprised because those two are just that good.
I agree, but being a Blues fan, right, you're going to agree with this next statement. We've seen what it's like to try and ride the back of a goalie. It doesn't work.
Well, you got to say, I mean, Benner, there was no fans.
Yeah.
All right, in the stands, and then they had a huge hiatus because of the whole pandemic and thing. So his momentum
was shot, and I get that. But what I'm talking about more, I'm going back looking at Mike Liut, Greg Millen, Curtis Joseph, Grant Fuhr, and
you're going back.
Glenn Hall,
Got
Jock
it.
Plant. Look at the goalies that have played for the Blues,
Great goalies.
and the fact that none of them won a cup with the Blues. A lot of people think that Binner was the glue and the backbone of that team. He wasn't, right? What he did is he gave the team confidence that if they made a mistake, it wasn't going to go in the back of the net. And if it did go in the back of the net, another one wasn't. The Grant Fuhr mentality. Okay, I gave up 6. I'm not going to get up another one. You go get 7 points. That's what I think he gave. Not that he didn't win the cup. Team defense won that cup.
He did have a great game 7 though. That stop against Joachim Nordstrom in the third period was,
Well, and then the stops he made in the first period of that game, until the Blues, because they controlled that game up until O'Reilly tipped it in. You know, but I'm digressing here. I guess my show, I can digress, right? But that's what I'm kind of talking about. You cannot ride the back of a goalie. You can ride the back of your defense, but not the back of a goalie. And that's where Arizona concerns me. I don't think they have that defense. And I also think you get that circle of mistrust where the defense hangs the goalie out to dry. Now the goalie goes, oh my goodness, I'm going to hang to dry, so I'm going to play a little bit further outside the net. Well, he plays a little further outside the net and he gives up a soft one. Now the defense goes, oh my God, he gave up a soft one. I got to push more and hang him out to dry more. So it's that circle of distrust that just built, and that's what I think is going to happen in Arizona until they solidify that defense.
And that is exactly what happened in that series against the Avalanche in the first round. I mean, the Avs, they hung in there for a while. In that first game, he was able to hold the fort for a while and then just gave up 3 late. Coyotes couldn't get on the board. Second game was late up. It was close up until very late. Avs broke the tie late, and the Coyotes actually took game 3. But then it was after that, everything fell apart. 7-1 in game 4, 7-1 in game 5. You can only ride it for so long because you need to give the goalie help. All he can do is stop the pucks. He can't stop the pucks from getting to him, and he can't put pucks in the other net.
I'm with you, and that's what's gonna, that's why I feel that that's where they're at now. So let's move on to our number 4. This is our first playoff seed. Now, one of the great things that I think about this is old-fashioned Norris Division, Campbell Conference, Smite Division type playoff. I absolutely freaking love it.
I love it. I mean, it's what they really should be doing right now because it's what they want with the rivalries and the playoffs and everything, but they had to go and add the wild cards and screw everything up. So, I mean, before I get number 4, I mean, I wish they would commit to a playoff system, whether they want a 1 through 8 or if they want a 1 through 4 in the division. I wish they would just decide what they want. But anyway.
I see both sides of it. I really do. I like having some mix-up, and I like the fact that you don't get 2 or 3 teams, and this has happened in the old system, 2 or 3 teams that are much better than that 4th team that sneaks in on the other side. So I do understand that heavily, right? And I don't have a problem or an issue with that. I get it. So as we move into number 4, I think our 4 is going to be the same, but I'll let you go ahead and go. Who's your number 4 seed, and who's going to face number 1?
Well, my number 4 seed is the Minnesota Wild. And the Wild, they have been a very mediocre team for a long time, and they've dipped in the last few seasons after just never going there in the playoffs and spinning their wheels for a long time. But I think this Wild team is going to start to bounce back a little bit. I think they have a very solid defense with Sutter, Spurgeon, Brodin, and Dumba. And Kirill Kaprizov is going to be the biggest X factor on this team by far. They've been trying to get him over for what seems like forever. And now he's finally here. And now we can finally see if he can live up to that hype and be that game-changing player that the Wild have needed for so long. We can see if Kevin Fiala can start to grow into more of that, not really a game breaker, but maybe more consistent top line player. They can have that of Kirill and Fiala in that top 6. They're also a deep team. They have Jordan Greenway and Eriksson Ek and Marcus Foligno. Victor Rask, not the best, but fine in a fourth line role. But the problem with the Wild is their goaltending. They traded Devin Dubnyk to San Jose, as I mentioned, but they replaced him with Cam Talbot. And we'll see what version of Cam Talbot we get out of Minnesota. He wasn't awful last year. He was pretty decent with the Flames. It was just about a .920 save percentage, but that season before with the Oilers, he was just not good at all. And if Talbot can just be league average, the Wild have an advantage over every team we've talked about earlier because they have the depth, they have a lot of talent, but if Cam Talbot collapses, it changes everything for the Wild. I mean, they have drafted well recently. They do have Marco Rossi coming up soon, but the team they have now, it might just be good enough to sneak into the playoffs in this division. It's very deep, not a ton of star power, but if Kaprizov can be that game changer like a Panarin was for Chicago, that changes a lot for the Wild, and that could be exactly what they need.
Yeah, well, I'm with you here. I see the Wild in fourth. I think originally I did have Phoenix in fourth and the Wild in fifth, but I flip-flopped them now. And the reason, you mentioned that, and I got to tell you, Rossi impressed me in the IHL. His team got COVID. They offered his team to move days, right? They offered the Germans. They said, no, that's not fair to everybody else. Let's go out there and do this. And he was the best player out there, and they never gave up, right? Put him on, he's another one of them. Don't screw that, put him out there. Let him get this 56 games in and become that leader. Even at the ripe old age of 19, let him be that leader because I think he can be that leader. And I think Minnesota has the one advantage that the other 4 teams don't. Minnesota doesn't give a shit about the other 4 teams. They don't. They're not in their division, really. They're not rivalries, at least not yet. Arizona will be, but right now. So they're teams that, okay, let's play. There's no hatred to it. There's no, we got to get to, there's no animosity built up. So if there's none of that built up, you're not going to listen to the hype. And you're going to go out there and play your game. You got to play your game. I think that bodes very well for them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, maybe they would have not done as well if they did stick around in that Central Division with teams like Tampa and teams that they're maybe more familiar with. But I think you're right. I think maybe getting some fresh faces against the Kings and the Sharks and the Ducks and teams like that will help them a lot and just be able to focus on hockey and play their game and not get caught up in the hype.
Okay. Yeah, you're gonna play the Blues. They're better. They're a rival. You're good up for it. But if you lose, you lose. Not a big deal. You're gonna play the Avalanche, a rival. They're better than you. You're gonna get up for it. But if you lose, you lose. No big deal. The Knights. The Knights are the Knights. They're not around or old enough to anybody have a rival. Well, you're gonna get up for it. You're gonna play it and see what happens. The other 4 teams, they just don't care about it. So play your game. If you win, you win. You lose, you lose. But that mentality of not worrying about it, not having that built-in rivalry, I think helps them and sticks them in the 4th slot. Right?
Absolutely.
I don't think. Now, the one difference here is I think if Arizona slips into that 4th spot, I think Arizona could take down the number 1 team, no matter who it is. I think that they could put it together. Because to get into that 4th spot, you're going to have to be playing your best hockey down the stretch. So the team that gets in that 4th spot, be it Arizona or Minnesota, I think Arizona has the better chance of knocking out the number 1 seed.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, maybe it's an out there thought, but you've heard I'm kind of crazy. But what do you think? Do you agree with me on that point or disagree?
I agree with you in the sense that teams that face adversity during a season and have to fight to get into a playoff spot always have a shot at knocking off a team that's been comfortably in first for a while. And like we'll get into in a little bit with the big scary 3, they're almost guaranteed their spots just with how far ahead they are in the division. So maybe an Arizona team or a Minnesota team that fights from game 1 to game 56 to get into the playoffs against a team like one of the big three that has been comfortably in their spot for a while, doesn't really have many big games outside of the other two big teams in the division, and they get to a playoff spot and all of a sudden they're getting tossed around by a team that's battle ready. I think that's absolutely possible. And like you said with Arizona, they have the goaltending to do that. Goaltending can steal you a series, and Minnesota just doesn't have that. Minnesota might be a deeper and better team, but in a 7-game playoff series, goaltending can make all the difference.
See, Brett, I'm not the idiot you tell me I am all the time. Okay, so that's right. So we have moved into Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. The big three. Come on, that was funny. You got to give me some credit for that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're a funny guy.
Yeah. So we move into to this big three. And when this division was announced, and when they announced that Minnesota was going in and Dallas was going out, my eyes went, whoop. Yeah, buddy.
Like how?
Oh, yeah. Whoop. There it is. I mean, that's the yeah, buddy. So we'll start at 3, and I have a feeling both our threes are the same. At least they better be, or you're getting kicked off my podcast.
No.
I know, he knows I'm joking. Come on, bud. Who's number 3?
Well, you might not like this very much then, because at number 3, I do have the St. Louis Blues at number 3. But I will give the caveat that this top 3 in the division is by far the best of any division. And I have the Blues, if they were in another division, winning at least 2 of them. If they were in the East, I'd have them number 1. If they were in that Canadian division up north, I would have them number 1. And I'd only have them behind Tampa in that Central division. So, but they are in this division with the other 2 teams that we'll get to later. But I am a bit higher on the Blues now that they have gone out and gotten Mike Hoffman, and I think they had a very strong offseason. I mean, when you lose your captain and star player, Alex Pietrangelo, you usually don't consider that a very good offseason, but they went out and replaced him with Torrey Krug, which I thought was a very smart signing if they couldn't get Petro signed. They went out and got Hoffman on the PTO and everything, and they are still the Blues that won the Cup for the most part 2 years ago. They still have the new captain O'Reilly. They still have all their depth with Perron and Schwartz, Sundqvist, Bozak, and Colton Parayko on their defense with Vince Dunn. It's a very deep team with a lot of talent. So even if they do finish 3rd in this division, I mean, I might be pandering a little bit here, but I'd still have them absolutely as a Stanley Cup contender. I mean,
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not with you with the Blues being 3rd in the division. I'm sorry I don't see it, but I'm with you in what you're saying. That, you know, that postage stamp that you could put over the bottom 5 teams, you could put a dime over the top 3.
Absolutely.
Right? You could put a dime over the top 3, and they are that close. And my number 3 is one of the reasons you mentioned, is Vegas. And my number 3 is Pietrangelo. Why would I say that? Because you've just taken a guy who has led his team to the Stanley Cup. He lifted that cup over his head and put him on a team that he's not a team leader. I really think that his leadership ability, how strong it is going to affect this team and affect it negatively, because this is a team that is very tight, that's been put together, and everyone on that team up until Pietrangelo has thought of themselves as a team, the island of misfit toys. They're the cast-offs that nobody wanted, and they were going to prove that we want you. Well, you know what? Petrangelo's not that cast-off. Not in one way, shape, or form is he that cast-off. He's the pedigree. He's the pure breed. He's the stud. Right? He's Secretariat coming into a breeding farm. And sometimes when you put that big guy in with big attitudes, it doesn't work. And the Blues saw that between Steen and Pietrangelo when Steen didn't get the captaincy and all of that. You know, whatever it was, I mean, I've heard different stories, left, right, and center. Some I can prove, some I can't. But whatever it was, we saw for a period how that destroyed a team. This is a 56-game season. If there's any of that at all, I could see Vegas missing the playoffs.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point you just brought up with the whole Vegas attitude and everything, and then sticking a cup-winning captain in there. That's a very good point. I don't know if I would go as far as missing the playoffs, but I would definitely agree with that. Vegas has definitely had the attitude that, like you said, island of misfit toys, no one wanted us and everything. That's what they built their identity around for such a long time, and Pietrangelo is not that. Even when they got Mark Stone, who's been considered the leader ever since they got him, he came from Ottawa. And now in Vegas, he's part of a Stanley Cup contender. He can build that same attitude. Pietrangelo is not that. And like you said, if that doesn't mesh, they will fall apart, because Vegas, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, is a very fragile team. They have a lot of attitude. When things are rolling, they're rolling great. But when they face adversity, they tend to crumble. You've seen it in the playoffs. Like when Washington started pushing back on them in the final, Vegas couldn't get anything going. When the Sharks started pushing back down 3-1, Vegas had no answer for them, and they choked that series. When Dallas started pushing them around last year, Vegas had no answer for them. So,
and in the playoffs, that's where Pietrangelo is going to be the leader, because he knows of that. I mean, the round 2 against Dallas in the playoff run, the Stanley Cup run, they got 2 elimination games in that, right? Game 6 that they blew Dallas away, where Colton Parayko damn near killed Ben Bishop. And then, Game 7, the double overtime, where Dallas missed going to the Western Conference Finals by a centimeter.
That much.
By a centimeter.
Could have changed history that close.
Oh yeah. So I'm with you. And what I mean by could miss the playoffs, let's say that they have the same start that the Blues had in 19, and they go the first half of the game, the first 28 games, and end up in 6th or 7th in the division. They're not coming back from that. The season's too short for them to come back from that. And that's why I say that they could miss the playoffs. Do I see them missing the playoffs? No, I don't. But that chance is there. And I think, just like the Hall deal is bigger than what people put onto it, I think Pietrangelo is more of a negative than he is a positive if he disrupts that mentality that they have. Because that mentality is what's gotten them to this point. Take it away, and who are they? A bunch of cast-offs. A bunch of cast-offs who don't believe in themselves anymore.
Is he going to be captain?
No. I do not see that.
I don't know if they're ever naming a captain.
And not only that, I don't even think they've given letters out. They have to give A's out, but I don't even know if he's going to be an A.
I think Mark Stone at least has an A, but
Mark Stone has an A, yeah. So maybe they give him an A. But you know what? To me, that's a mistake. Just what I talked about. Give that guy an A. There goes that misfit toys. There goes that mentality. And that is, you got Ryan Reeves on there. Ryan Reeves bought into Island of Misfit Toys. Stastny, while he was there, brought into Island of Misfit Toys. Stone bought into Island of Misfit Toys. Marc-Andre Fleury bought into Island of Misfit Toys. Lanier, and that's the best goalie tandem, by the way, bought into Island of Misfit Toys. They all bought into it. You take that away, and what do they buy into? I don't think they have the skill to buy into Cup or Bust.
that's a very good point.
I did not speak too long.
No. It's I agree. I like Reeves still, but I think him and Petro are, gonna definitely be well together. He's gonna take care
Actually,
of
I see some oil and water there.
Oh yeah?
I see a little oil and water there. And you know what? When Reeves plays the Blues, you could see some fire. You could see some fire, and one of the guys that he showed that fire against was Petro. So I see a little oil and water there. Well, we've just killed it on what I'm guessing is your number 2, the Knights, and my number 3 was the Knights, and my number 2 was the Blues. God, I hate to say it. The reason that I have the Blues at 2 is one thing that we haven't talked about, and I think it's the biggest question mark on the Blues right now. And God, I can't believe I'm saying this again. After 51 years of being a fan of this team, you would think I didn't have to say this anymore. It's fucking goaltending.
That is the one thing I was going to bring up with the Blues, and that would be why I had them in third. Because I was talking very positive, but my question mark with the Blues is Jordan Binnington, and they don't have Jake Allen to back him up anymore. Can Jordan Binnington become a full-time NHL player? Yes, he won the Cup in his first season. Yes, he started out decent last year. But that playoff against Vancouver was one of the worst performances of all time by a goalie.
No, I absolutely agree. And then you have Husso, who I have no confidence in whatsoever. And I just had Darren Pang on, right? Remember Panger? And I asked Panger about this. And he said something really important that I'm surprised no one's picked up on, and I'm going to write about it. Husso has to get you 20 points. 10 wins. 10 wins. Think about this. He's got to get you 10 wins. And probably, maybe he plays 20 games. Maybe.
In a 56
game season. Yeah, I lost him.
You're putting a lot on an unproven goalie right there, unfortunately.
Right? 56 game season, he's got to win you 10 games. And he's probably going to play 20. That's a momentous task. It really is. Right? And, you know, like when I talked about the goaltenders of the past, you know, that's, the Blues have always lacked that goaltender that could get in net and get it done. Well, we had it in an amazing tandem between Allen and Binnington. And Allen was a lot better goalie than people gave him credit for. Absolutely a lot better goalie than people gave him credit for. I talked to a former NHL goalie coach, and I cannot say who it was, but they told me that Allen is far more superior and technical and has far more skill than Binnington. Bennington's a flash in the pan.
That's been my gut feeling about Binnington. I mean, my theory about goalies is sometimes you see this. You see a goalie that's at least somewhat NHL ready, come in the middle of the season, teams have no tape on him, they don't know how to beat him, he comes out super hot, and he stops everything he sees, and you've seen it with Matt Murray, and now you've seen it with Jordan Binnington, and then they're the next big goalie and everything, where did this guy come from? And then teams get tape on them, and then they know how to beat him, and then they start to go back down to earth. And I worry about that with Binnington.
The one thing that I think the one thing that the Blues have, and you're going to hate me when I say this, they have the best defense in this division, if not second or third in the league. The Blues offense comes from their defense. No team in this league forechecks better than the Blues do. No team. And that's including the Avalanche, who want to forecheck like the Blues do. They do not. The Blues defense, if the Blues defense is there, it will cover some of the miscomings. How much, I don't know.
I think that's a very good point. I mean, I'll get into the Avs obviously in a second, but the Blues, they definitely have that experience on defense that would give them that advantage. I mean, I think it's a coin flip in terms of defense, but when push comes to shove, experience wins.
So before we get to number 1, we'll recap. So your number 8.
Los Angeles Kings.
Mine was the San Jose Sharks. Your 7.
San Jose Sharks.
Mine was the Kings. 6.
Number 6 was the Arizona Coyotes.
For me, it was the Ducks, but I made a caveat that they could easily flip up. 5.
My number 5 was the Ducks, with that same maybe that they could be a little better than people expect, but.
So my 5, I dropped Arizona into 5 from my normal 4 that I did on another podcast. So we'll get into our 4. Your number 4 is?
Minnesota Wild.
And I think this is the only pick we actually agreed on. My number 4 was the Minnesota Wild. Your number 3?
Mine was the St. Louis Blues.
Mine's the Vegas Golden Knights. Your number 2?
The Vegas Golden Knights.
My number 2, and I can't believe I gotta fucking say this, is the Blues. And we get to number 1. And
Number 1.
And since you are from Avalanche Land, from Clunky Land, from Clunky-nitis, I'll call it, I will let you tell everybody why the frickin' Avalanche are going to win this division.
Colorado Avalanche are going to win this division. I'm putting that out there. Absolutely, they are going to win this division. Everything for the Avalanche the last few years has culminated into making this team. And this is, in my opinion, I mean, I can't see into the future, but this is, in my opinion, maybe the best team the Avs are going to have. Because next season, new contracts and everything, but looking at this season, there is nothing not to like about this team. They have star power oozing from every pore. Rantanen, McKinnon, they just got Brandon Saad. They have a potential emergence from Andre Burakovsky, even more than he got last season. They have second line center Kadri, and they just have hilarious amounts of depth with Donskoy, Comfer, Calvert. They have just Valerie Nichushkin, who they can plug into their first line whenever they need. They have a physical fourth line center in Belmar. They have a wild card like Tyson Jost, who could be a very good in a depth role, or he could prove himself to be in a top 6 role. And like I was mentioning earlier with the defense and how I think it's a coin flip, I think on paper, at least, the Avs have the advantage while the Blues have the advantage in experience. I mean, Cale Makar is just an outstanding defenseman, as we've seen all the winner last season, and now they've added Devon Tays to that mix, who's probably going to be on that top pair with him. They have Sam Girard on that second pair. They can pair him with a healthy Eric Johnson, hopefully, or Ian Cole. And then their third pair, I mean, it's a lot of teams have struggles icing a third pair defense. The Avs do not. They can put Ryan Graves or Devon Tays down there with Ian Cole, or you know who else they can put up there now? Bowen Byram. He's going to be with the Avs. He's on his way there right now. And you could have potentially Bowen Byram as your 7th defenseman and interchange him with Ian Cole or even Devon Tays or whoever at that point. And then you get to their supposed weakness, which is their goaltending. I don't think it's much of a weakness. I think Philip Grubauer is the very solid starting goalie. Not the best. I give goaltending advantage to the Golden Knights in this scenario, obviously, but Philip Grubauer is a very solid starting goaltender, and he can get you, if he stays healthy in a bad season, he will get you at least a 9-10, and at his best, he can get you a 9-20, which is more than you can ask for from a starting goalie. I mean, on a team this good, you don't need an amazing starting goalie. You just need him to stop pucks, and Grubauer's more than capable of that. And they also have Pavel Francouz backing him up, who proved himself last season to be a capable backup goalie. Yes, he struggled in the playoffs, but during the regular season, he had even better numbers than Grubauer did. So when you go top to bottom in this lineup, unless injuries start to take hold, which they struggled with injuries a lot last season, there is nothing not to like. This team is young. They have all the depth that they need across the board. They have a ridiculous prospect pool. Even if injuries start to come into effect, they can still call up player after player after player to plug in. They can play with their lines however they want. They can have Burakovsky on that top line with McKinnon and Rantanen, or they can put Nichushkin up there for fun. They can move Landeskog or Rantanen up and down however they want. They're getting an even better season from Cale Makar. I know I'm starting to ramble here, but
I'm with you. I hear it. I see it. I hear it. I see it. I get it. I love looking for the things people miss, and I think the thing that everyone's missed on this team is expectation. The expectation is there. Up until this season, the expectation's never been there, and most teams have a 3 to 4 year window, right? The Avalanche have a 1 year window. This is it. This is cup or bust. Do they have the mentality and the experience to handle cup or bust? That's the only huge negative I have. If you and me wanted to do power rankings and rank the teams from 31st to 1st, more than likely Colorado would be my number one team. And I'm as blues as you can get. I'm as blue as a boy can be, right? The song Walking in Memphis. Got a first class ticket, but I'm as blue as a boy can be, and that's me. And yes, I would rank them number one. That X factor of knowledge, experience, and understanding the moment, I don't think they have it. And that could be absolutely huge when it comes, screwed up.
Yeah, and that's something I've actually brought up on my show in the past, that this is the season with expectations. Obviously, a few years ago, they had that league worst season, worst team in salary cap era history. Then they surpass expectations and make the playoffs. Then they sneak in again. Next year, expectations start to rise a little bit. They surpass those again. And now the expectation is on. But to answer if they do have it, I think they do. From all the attitude I have seen from this team coming into this season, I think they understand the expectation, and I think they are ready for it. I think Nathan MacKinnon is a different breed of player. I think that loss to Dallas in the playoffs last season, the way it happened, you could see something burn in his eyes in that handshake line, and he went back to the drawing board. He is going to be even better this season, and they have acknowledged, yes, we're the favorites. Yes, we're ready for it. Yes, we're going to be, they haven't said this outright, but they are going to be the team they expect themselves to be from start to finish. It is cup or bust. And obviously, as we saw from Tampa a few years ago, that might not always work out that way. But in terms of attitude, this team has the right attitude. They have the attitude of winners. They're not at Toronto where they still need to prove themselves. They have shown they can go far. They have the talent to go far. The next step is getting out of that second round hump and not just getting there, but winning the whole thing, because it doesn't get easier after this season.
Absolutely. And this is where my biggest question mark comes up. And it's the old Mike Tyson quote. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And guess what's going to happen on January 13th and January 15th? Somebody's getting punched in the face.
Well, Nathan MacKinnon knows how to box, so I'm sure he can take a punch to the face as well as give one out. This Avs team, with all the talent that they have, they can definitely give and take a punch. And that opening game, those first two games, those are going to be very special games, because something I mention a lot on my show is that the Avs, my problem with the Avs is not their fault, but they don't have a lot of measuring stick games this season. And like we were saying with Arizona, like Arizona can fight their way into the playoffs from game 1 to 56. The Avs might not have to do that just because they're that good. They might be in first and stay there the entire way. The only time they are going to be able to test themselves are when they play the Blues and when they play the Golden Knights. Outside of that, they should beat every team they face every time. I mean, they won't, just because it's hockey and bounces happen. But expectation is you are much better than those teams. They are not a valid test. If they struggle against the Blues and the Golden Knights this season, it's going to leave a lot of doubts coming into the playoffs, no matter where they finish.
And you know what? I'm with you there. And I think the NHL did both the Blues and the Avalanche a favor. But there's one difference. Let's say this ends up 2 points, right? The Avs beat the Blues beat the Avs. 1-1. 1-1 0. No overtime. 1-1 0. Who takes home the win from that?
The Blues.
The Blues. The Avalanche have got to go out and win their first two games. And not only that, the Blues, after that 1-1, have the Kings next at home. Okay, we went 1-1 against them. Now we go 2-0 against the Kings. They start the season 3-1. What happens with the Avalanche? I forget who their next opponent is.
I think we also have the Kings after that.
Shouldn't, because we play the same day.
So it might be I don't know.
No, we have the Sharks. We have the Sharks. You have the Kings.
Okay. So it is the Kings. We have the Kings and then the Sharks after that.
So we have the Sharks and then the Kings. So that, but that's that mentality that comes through. If you don't go 2-0, it's not successful for you. If we go 1-1, absolutely, we'll take it. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, and I actually brought up that exact thing on an earlier episode of my show. If you don't show up against the Blues, you're not going to have another chance to prove yourself until you play the Blues again in 3 weeks, because you're going to play the Sharks, the Kings, the Ducks, and the Wild before you get back to another matchup like that. And they don't play Vegas until mid-February, until they play them 4 times in a row and in Lake Tahoe, like it was announced earlier. So you've got to show up hard against the Blues, because this isn't like a normal regular season where, we lost our opener, but, we're playing a very good team out east. Like, we're not playing Pittsburgh after we play St. Louis. We're playing the California teams for, 3 straight weeks.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's a huge factor. It really is. If you get punched in the nose in that first 2 games, how do you handle getting punched in the nose again when it happens again? Because you're not going to get punched in the nose again. You're really not. But what if you do? What if one of those teams comes back and punches you in the nose and takes their 2 games? Right? And that's where I talked about having that mentality, and that's where I come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am fascinated to see how these first 2 games turn out. It is the best season opener either side could ask for.
Hey, Griffin, I got to tell you something. This was a lot of freaking fun, right?
I've had a blast.
I love your technical mind with my garbled up junk of a thinking, but they work well together. I think we work really well together. Thank you so much for joining me and doing this. You know what? I'm raising my hand. You want to do this on your show on tape separately? Absolutely. We'll figure out how to do it, buddy. This was fun, and we're going to do more of this during the season. I'm a big fan of the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm on the BlueNote's pods, and you gave me, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, you jumped out and said, I love you guys. I would work with you anytime. And I'm going to return that and say, I've loved what you're doing, and I'll work with you anytime too, my friend.
I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. And this has been a blast. This is an outstanding show. I love how you guys work and everything, and I really hope we can do more of this during the season. That, like I said, this has been fantastic. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Stop it! You're making us blush.
Oh shit! I want come on, more. You know.
Thank you very much.
So again, Griffin, thank you so much. God, man. And I got to say, because I do so many podcasts now. I do my own, the Blue Note Fan Report, which this is. I do Blue Notes. I'm a guest on Crunch Time, which is mainly St. Louis. I've been on Happy Hour, which is not Montreal, not the hockey pod, but I've had other hockey pods want to jump on me. So to do all of this and drive your mind crazy, it's just nice to sit down and talk hockey with no expectations other than it's how you feel, it's how I feel, let's have fun. And I got, see, the good thing is Brett is in my eyesight. Normally he's off to the side and I can't see him. I've been able to look at him dead on and I can just see the smile on his face, and he's either giving you like, wow, you know what you're talking about, or he's looking at me and said, guy, you need to shut the fuck up really quick. So self-deprecating humor. That's me.
Sorry, I'm having too much fun with this soundboard, guys.
But it's great. This is what podcasting and radio shows should be, in my eyes, right?
Absolutely. This is what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about talking sports. It's fun. It's all supposed to be fun. I think we can forget that sometimes. And this has been just a very great breath of fresh air to come on here and just shoot the shit. Yeah. Just talk hockey. I love it.
He's going to love the closing, ain't he?
Oh, hockey's going to be... I can't wait. Hockey's
so here
back,
you come.
Well,
Chris, we've gone longer than we wanted to, but it was absolutely worth it. So this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan.
And Brett, the collector.
First of all, you got to know that we are absolutely bleeding blue with us and not you. And we cannot wait to have you on the Blue Note Fan Report again.
Yeah, man.
Right?
It was good
can't wait
fun.
to get back. All you
So-
gotta do is-
In the spirit of Hawaii, we give you our best. You ready?
Yeah.
Aloha!
Yeah, Griff.
Okay, Brett. This is the first time that I've had you on camera the whole interview. And I know you had fun. I know you loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to let you tell everybody what you thought of that podcast.
I mean, I thought the podcast was great. You know, Griff had a lot of great points, and when he was talking about his teams, his top 8, I was just like, man, this guy knows his stuff. And then you too. I mean, you guys are both great at what you do, and I'm happy to be invited here and to have some camera time. Yeah.
It really felt like we fed off of each other really well.
Oh, yeah,
like he was very technical,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very, and I don't know what the right word is, but I guess emotional, mental. I got more in the mental side of the team, of the game, of how that affects the game, the X factor side of the game.
Yeah.
And I felt like it just went really well. It gelled.
I concur.
Right. And I got it, first of all, Brett, I mean, on top of that wonderful picture you gave me over there, I got to say thank you so much
Oh yeah,
for,
no
for
worries.
this shirt.
Chopper.
This is, and I'm don't want to cut my head off too
Alan
bad,
Kinnis.
but this is a beautiful, beautiful shirt. You said there's only a few of them in existence.
Oh
that-
yeah,
that you know, though.
that's a hard one to find, and I'm glad it fits you perfectly.
Yeah, it does.
Right
So,
on.
and Brett, the more we do, Twister.
Yeah.
The more we do these and the more you're able to help, I think the better I get, the better you get, and the soundboard work was great.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling more comfortable, with the whole production sound aspect of it, the audio and everything. And if it wasn't for you helping me out,
Well, guys, this is what the Blue Note Fan Report is all about. It's about talking about hockey.
yeah.
Right? I know I have all these gimmicks and shit that I throw in there, but when you boil it down to it, it comes simply this. I love the game of hockey.
Me
I
too.
love watching the game of hockey. I'm so hockey depraved, I watched the Blackhawks on the Hockey Network all day yesterday because that was all the hockey that was on. Yeah, I know. But that's what it was. So this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan,
And Brett the collector.
producer too, telling everybody out there, you've got to know that
Let's go
Blues, let's go Blues, let's go Blues. This is Guy and Brett saying aloha, mahalo. You got to know that we are bleeding blue with you. And we can't wait to see you again on the next Blue Note Fan Report. Aloha!